I was watching this. Um, it's some kind of hearing or some sort. I didn't catch exactly what it was. It wasn't really introduced. It was small print, and it just kind of came up. Um, it's one of Laura Flanders' episodes, and it's a sequence of people pointing out um, situations where there was systemic discrimination against not just people of color, but women of color specifically. And it's going, um, over situation after situation. Obviously, the point they're trying to make is that uh, it's there's this systemic discrimination against blacks, but more so, there's that intersection of blacks and females that has to deal with multiple different types of discrimination, right? And systemic oppression. And it kind of it goes back to what I've been saying over the last couple of days in a couple of different ways. There's a bunch of different examples here, but I want to focus, and I could focus on any of them, but I want to focus on this one specifically. There was a woman, and she was doing the hearing, and she was talking about how there aren't any social programs for young women of color. All of the systemic resources are being put into the young boys because women don't need this kind of aid. They're doing okay, etc., etc. And she rejected that. She said, no, women need to have the same level, or in this case we're talking about girls. Girls need to have the same level of attention so that they don't fall behind. And her filter, the way that she was analyzing it, was from the perspective of, okay, all of the resources are going into the boys, none of the resources are going into the girls, therefore the girls are at a disadvantage. This is about gender. But I might posit that if you were to look at it more closely, you determine that it's actually about class. And my battery's low. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so I'm not saying it's not about gender at all. And I'm not saying it's not about race at all either. But the perception of the program coming from this woman is clearly that it's a program that's designed to eliminate inequalities in society and provide people with better opportunities in order to, do the hierarchy climbing thing, right? To balance the playing field, so to speak, right? But and that certainly it's a perspective that is going to be rooted in what it is that she would want these programs to be, which is rooted very much. I mean, it's certainly rooted in her gender, yes, and it's certainly rooted in her race, yes, but rooted largely in her class, because she sees it as a program designed to alleviate inequality. Now, let's say you're on the other side of this program. Okay, you're the rich person, who's probably white, who has, designed the program, has funded it, has put it in place. What do you think your goals are? Are your goals to provide greater opportunities towards low-income colored people? In fact, one might argue, I think I said one might argue, one might argue that if that actually was the intent of the program, then it would be gender neutral. So what does a program that focuses specifically on boys, what is it likely that the purpose of that program is? I'm probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but of course the purpose of that program would be to prevent property crimes, right? If you look at Ferguson, where you look at, where was Trayvon Martin? Was it in Jacksonville? Somewhere outside Jacksonville. Ferguson was, of course, a lot more dramatic. And you look at Ferguson, what exactly is it that you think the people at the top are thinking? Are they thinking that we need to provide greater opportunities? Put in place programs that have better educational opportunities, and deal with the cops, all these sorts of things. Do you really think that's what they're thinking as they're putting these programs down? Again, one might argue that if that really was what they were thinking, then it would be gender neutral. Because at this day and age, how could it not be? If we look at the program as it exists, and how it's targeted specifically towards boys, you get a different set of motives. The motives are more connected to the idea of policing, right? I mean, who trained the cops in the first place? They're put through training for racial profiling. They're taught a lot of things that would be very hard to describe without using the term racist. And then you think that those exact same people are going to put in place a program that's designed to increase opportunities? What it's designed to do is convert what is seen as a violent threat into something that's not one, right? And so what she says in in the hearing, is that they say, our young girls are doing okay. They don't need this. And she says, that's crazy. If we don't help them, then they'll fall through the cracks. But that argument is coming from a false understanding of what the program is. If you understand that the program is designed to essentially, get rid of revolutionary thinking before they're, when they're kids, before it sets in, then in fact, in truth, the girls don't need that help. And it's targeted at the boys for the very specific reason that it's what the program is actually for. And so she has in her mind, this is about gender. This is sexist. This is discriminatory. But she only thinks that because of a level of naivety. Sorry, my wrists are funny again. Because of a level of naivety about what the motives of the system actually are, which is itself probably not entirely random. You would think that if anybody should be suspicious, but of course that's why they're taught to not be suspicious. And so, from the people at the top's perspective, what is it about? You're damned right it's about class. It's entirely about class. They'd set up the same program if they were dealing with, unrest with Italians or unrest with Latinos or unrest with whites. They don't care what color you are. They don't care what gender you are. They care about minimizing property damage. And it's why liberals are wrong. Well, you can't really build alliances with liberals because they don't really understand how things are. They're lost in a sea of naivety and just a broad swath of cluelessness as to what it is that they're actually dealing with. I'm fully confident that if you could sit this woman down and explain to her that, no, the system doesn't have your best interests in mind, it just wants you to stop, it wants your kids to stop breaking stuff. If she realized that, I think her entire outlook on the situation would be dramatically different. But the moment you actually convince her, she's replaced by another one. And it's just endless arrays of liberals that are equally clueless. So what do? It would be a lot easier if it weren't for the fact that the way that black culture has developed over the last, I don't know what it's been, 30 years, has been so intrinsically liberal. It worships wealth, worships money, worships status. When you're dealing with a population, their icons are like Beyonce and, I don't know, is Kobe Bryant the basketball player nowadays? I don't even know who plays basketball anymore. But it's just like obscene levels of wealth. Status, being rich, like these are the goals. It's the most capitalist thing you can imagine. And this is the entire subculture. It's just all about leveling things out, making things more evil. Sorry, making things more even. Just total base ideological liberalism. Of course, I'm speaking in aggregate, obviously, but it's the actual truth of it. It's frustrating. You want a broad-based movement, you want people of all different colors and cultures and religions, and, well, ideally you don't want anybody of any religion. They all can go away. But, realistically, you don't want to, end up pigeonholed with any specific, defining characteristic. You want to get everybody involved. You can't work otherwise, right? It's a large amount of the population. And it's just not leftist. Despite its historical association with it. A lot of hard questions coming up. And I think that it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. At least the older generation. The older generation is more traditional Christian value. It's the younger generation that's really just total, absolute market fundamentalist liberal, capitalist, no holds barred if you're white, and I'm white, at least I'm mostly white, kind of white. It's almost summer. That's about as white as I get. Wait for the summer. You'll I get brown in the summer. Um, but I don't listen to hip hop at all. Um, but if you do take the time to sit down and listen to a little bit of it and actually read it and take a moment to try and understand it, it's I mean I don't want to come off like the PMRC either. I'm not saying you should ban it. I'm not saying there should be restrictions on it. I'm just saying that we're going to have to deal with the consequences of it. It's a generation of black people coming up that um, are neoliberal to the core, and if that's the Democratic Party, then I think we're all in some trouble. You might make a Republican enemy still. But we get lost in these narratives, right? We want things to be about the characteristics that define us uniquely as individuals. Because we're narcissists. We're taught to be narcissists, even if we don't want to be. It's a lot harder for a lot of people to take that step back and realize that, wait a second, this really isn't about me. This isn't really about the things that define me. This is, like most things, in fact, about property rights, which means that it's all about class. And if you've got ideas on how to get that, through to people, then I'd like to hear it, because I don't have any ideas.